This is a tremendous opportunity. I think we need to talk about that. The opportunity lies in that when markets are going well, it's an easy business. We can focus on our clients are happy, everything's going great. When markets are down, this is when we need to step up as financial advisors. And this is where we can show our worth, we can build trust, we can enhance our relationships, and we can set our businesses up for the future through these kinds of times.
Hi, I'm Chris Reynolds. And for my entire career, it's been my mission to help independent financial advisors build a better business through a remarkable client experience. In this podcast, you're going to hear from the visionaries, from the leaders, from the independent advisors who are reshaping the future of the financial advice industry. At the end of each episode, I'm going to leave you with at least one winnable idea that you can start implementing right away. Let's turn the page on building a better business. Welcome to another episode of Turning the Page. I'm your host, Chris Reynolds, and today we have a very special guest. We have Dan Nolan, all the way from beautiful Ottawa. I've known Dan for a long, long time. I was trying to remember before the show how long we've known each other. I'm going to put it at close to 20 years. He's been in the business since 1992. He did a fantastic job, built his own business. I'm going to let him tell his story. And I thought this would be a great conversation to talk about clients in more volatile markets and the conversations that you should be having. So Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Maybe you tell us a little bit about how you got into the business. How did you get here?
Sure, my pleasure. So getting into the business and staying in the business is two different reasons for sure. Getting into the business was easy. My father-in-law was an investment advisor, and he had been so since 1971. So he's been a long-standing investment advisor. And I was coming out of university absolutely knowing nothing about anything and needed to get into something for a career. And investments sounded like a really fascinating area to get into. So he graciously took me on as his junior advisor, and I quickly realized once I got in there that the reason I got in wasn't the reason I stayed, because it wasn't an investment business at all, as you and I know it. Yeah, the investment's the commodity. Really, what it was and what it turned out to be was a people business. And thank God that was the case, because that's what's so rewarding and that's what's so special and motivating and fun. Ultimately, is when you get to deal with people. The investment side is just table stakes, and that's what kept me going through all these years, is the fact that I get to deal with wonderful people and get to bring them through times like this that we're just about to discuss, because it's uber important that we talk about it.
At times like this, it does come down to people as well. It's about emotion. It's how people deal with I'm going to call the stresses of the market. Now, you've managed through these tough markets before. Tell me a little bit about some of the conversations you've been having with clients. What have they been saying? But more importantly, what have you been saying? How have you been reacting to it and telling your clients?
I think at its face, the client would tell you that they're worried about the financial markets. They're not worried about the financial market. They're worried about the impact things are having on their own personal situation ultimately. So it's a very important distinction, right? When we're dealing with clients and we're talking with clients, because if we're focusing on what we think they're worried about, which is the financial markets, we're really not addressing what their real fear and anxiety is all about. And that is, am I going to be okay? Am I going to make it through this intact? And I still have, I can still fulfill all my dreams and goals and wishes that we put into place. And so if we're, we need to make that distinction ultimately, I think, in our client interactions. It's about understanding that and then taking them through this time. Being, an advisory role is more about, you can call it holding your hands, holding their hands, if you will, but really it's being there with them through to the end of this sort of, financial market downturn. It's making sure that, letting them know they're still on track to reach goals and objectives. It's not about the financial markets per se. It's about, I'm going to be here with you and I'm going to help you get through this point in time. And the other side is just around the corner at some point. We don't know when, we can't control that, but we know you're still on track to meet your goals and objectives. And really, when focusing on that kind of thing, I found in the past, they just want to know you're there for them, you're with them, and you're going to help them get through to the end of it. And that's important.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. And I don't know if everyone takes that lesson, that it really comes back to their financial plan. It really comes back to them and what they want to accomplish. To your point, the market is, it's concerning. It causes anxiety, but they also want to know that you're confident, that you've been through it before, that there is another side to this. As they say, this too shall pass. As we talked about COVID, we talked about the last downturn, but there is a plan in place. Now, one of the things that I hear all the time, and I want to get your reaction to it, is you hear, but it's different this time. How do you react to the "but it's different this time" statement, which we hear every downturn, by the way? But how do you address that?
Well, it is different because every time is different. There's always something new that comes up to move markets the way they're moved. Whether it's this time it's interest rates and COVID and inflation and war and all this whatever stuff is in right hitting us now. But in the end, it's always going to be something that causes financial markets to drop. But really, it's the same. It's just another time of when markets are lower. I mean, markets rise long term 80% of the time. It's just another kind of bout of anxiety and market anxiety, if you will, that we're going through right now. And so it's not really different. All we need to do through this, and by the way, this is a tremendous opportunity. I think we need to talk about that. The opportunity lies in that when markets are going well, it's an easy business. We can focus on our clients. Our clients are happy. Everything's going great. When markets are down, this is when we need to step up as financial advisors. And this is where we can show our worth. We can build trust. We can enhance our relationships. And we can set our businesses up for the future through these kinds of times, right? And it's so it's vital that we kind of view it that way, kind of flip it on its head, that it's not a time to be worried as an advisor. You can't think the same way a client thinks. You need to flip it on its head. This is a tremendous opportunity. If I can dig into my client base and let them know that I'm there for them, I'm with them, I'm going to take them through this, and they're going to be fine coming out on the other side, it's going to set up your business, an advisory business, for the rest of your career, particularly during a downturn that is extended like this one.
Absolutely. Like, a critical piece of advice is, this is where we earn our money. This is why people pay us. Because as advisors, anyone can do well in a good market. It's the bad markets where people really shine. But it's also helping them understand the old adage. Like, you go to any investment course, they'll teach you the same thing: buy low, sell high, right? Everyone tells you the same thing: buy low, sell high. Here's an ironic thing, though. The number one asset class for people to put new money into right now is cash. Yeah. So just as the equity markets are nice and valued, getting lower than they were 6 months ago, for an example, where everyone was piling money in equities, all of a sudden people are piling money into cash. Now, the ironic part is, as soon as the markets go back up again, they'll take all that money out of cash and they'll put it back into the equity markets. Yeah. How do you get somebody to go against their nature, their fears, and embrace the philosophy of buying low, selling high? Do you have any techniques that you could share with the audience?
Well, really, it's about education through years of being with your clients through these kinds of things. I mean, this downturn is a little more extended than your typical intra-year correction, if you will. But It's just as important to continuously drip on your clients that when things like this happen, look at it differently. Yes, it's a time of a little more anxiety, yet there's a huge opportunity for clients as well that have capital to take advantage of it. And there's strategies to, whether it's cost averaging and over time, or whatever the clients feel comfortable in, as long as they're starting to invest during this time and getting money off the table and into their plans. And by the way, if you don't have a plan in place, it becomes a lot more difficult for clients to anchor to anything, right? You need to be able to anchor to something. And if you're anchoring to that plan, and you can realize that injecting money, and you've already had conversations in the past about why the importance of injecting money in times like this. You can see that, you can show them that, what the benefit is of doing it now versus waiting, because they're anchored to something. That's kind of how we do it, or our team has done it, and it's been successful. I mean, ultimately, not everybody's going to feel confident enough to put money in when things are lower, because it's an emotional reaction. It's like, I had one client say, well, why do I want to put money, bet on a horse that finishes last all the time? Well, that's not the way to look at it. we got to look at things differently, and that they're greater minds than us are investing money all the time when markets are down. They look for opportunities, and that's the kind of conversations that need to take place, not just in bad times, but also in good times. Like those kinds of things have to happen often so that they're aware and ready.
So Dan, I totally agree. That's how you do it. So that comes with a lot of communication, and every great relationship is based upon communication. So maybe give some examples for our audience of ways that you communicate. I know you guys do like a financial plan for every client. You do regular reviews. You probably do touch bases. Is there anything else that you do that you found effective to communicate these types of messages with clients?
It's ongoing. I mean, outside of all the reviews that we do, and obviously reviews that are booked already in the calendar. So it's not ad hoc. It's a very detailed oriented process that we put everybody through so that we're making sure they're taken care of and we're not missing people. But it's also, there are ways of being able to establish trust. This business is about trust. It's about building trust. Every interaction you have with a client's an opportunity to enhance that trust. You can do that by strictly speaking, regularly about their investment plans, but I think that's the wrong thing to do. I think once you've established all of that stuff, that's there. Now what you have to do is build that trust through other means. And really what that means to me is that there's other ways of establishing relationships, whether it's a dinner or it's a lunch or it's an event or it's something that, somebody has gone through a significant point in their life, and it's acknowledging that and maybe sending a small gift or doing something like that is outside of the box a little bit. And it's not just related to investments. And that's the way you build relationships, obviously, with anybody is all about that kind of thing. It's your professional relationship, 100%. You have to establish that personal relationship. And that's how you're going to keep a client forever. And that's also how, when times like this happen, right? That they're going to go, you know what, I trust. So as long as you are saying this is what's going to happen or should happen more than anything, then I trust you. And that's kind of I think the way, I hope I answered your question there, but I think that's kind of how we move forward at them to do the things you're looking for them to do.
Absolutely. So I think that really comes down to the crux of the whole thing is it's not necessarily about the investments. It's about the relationship that you have with the clients. And being a financial advisor, by the way, this goes for any entrepreneur, is having that amount of trust with your clients, that openness, that you really care about them as people, not just clients. And if you cross that line into that spectrum of their lives, as I said, these types of things will happen from time to time. You and I have seen, I don't know how many in our collective careers, but during that time, what's going to happen is people will trust what you have to say, know that you have their best interest in mind, and do the right thing. After all, people pay us for the advice that we give them. They should take the advice that we give them. What is the one piece of advice that you've received through your career that you would like that you would pass on to younger advisors who are joining the business right now?
I think you've got to get into, if you're a young advisor, I think we touched on it earlier. The focus shouldn't be on, I want to be an investment advisor. I think the focus should be on, I want to get into this business to really help people. That is the bottom line, because if you have that mindset, then you're always trying to build trust. And if you have that mindset, your clients are going to, follow you through good times and bad times. And we have such a huge responsibility. I mean, this isn't a career that anybody should take lightly, because outside of their doctors and medical professionals, I mean, financial advisors are the next kind of most important, or maybe as equal, or anyways, at least as equal in terms of a client or a person's life. We're one part psychologist, we're one part investment manager, one part life coach, friends and confidence. And we hear things that most other people wouldn't, they don't tell most other people.
Would never hear.
Yeah, well, 100%. And so isn't that amazing though, right? By going into the business with that in mind of hopefully build that kind of rapport with a client, you can't help but be successful. You can't help but be successful.
Right. You will only get value when you create value for others. So the more value that you can create for another person, the more value that you will create for yourself. And I think you basically summed it up in that piece of advice.
For sure. It's a really fun business to be in. It really is. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, it's going to be a very long career too. So.
Absolutely. Well, now I go into a segment where I'm going to ask you 3 questions. I'm going to call it my rapid question part. So,
Okay.
Dan, first, what do you love to do? What is it? If there's one thing that you could do, and even if you didn't get paid for it, you would do, what would that be?
Even if I didn't get paid for it. Oh boy, that is a good one. There are lots of things I like to do. Right now, there's 2 things I love to do more than anything. I love to be at my cottage, and I love to be with my grandchild. But in terms of a career, like if I had to do something from a volunteer perspective,
Perfect.
I think it would be coaching.
Well, I think you're a natural coach. So the other question I ask is, what is the most memorable interaction that you've ever had with a client?
Oh boy. That's a good one too. It actually wasn't with a client that made me any money. So what I mean by that is this client didn't have a large asset base. This client, this is early on in my career actually. I didn't have a large asset base. She was a single lady with Alzheimer's, and she early onset. She was in her 50s. So it was early onset Alzheimer's, and I still help her today. And this was probably 20 years ago. And today we still interact. I still help her with her bills. I still help her with decision making in her life. And unfortunately, she's not really able to make a lot of decisions anymore. But that to me has been the most memorable, even though it's not impactful in other ways. It's super impactful on my life because she had no one else, and she came to me. She had a little bit of money, which has since gone, but that's okay. She's still a really important person in my life, and yeah, that I would have to say that's the most impactful.
That alone tells everybody who you are as a real person. And the last question is, how do you want to be remembered?
Oh boy, these are hard questions, Chris.
See, that's why I leave them to the end. It gets people thinking.
When I finally leave this career, if I want to look at it from that aspect, I think I'd love to be remembered that I had some impact on people's lives for the better in terms of them reaching, their goals and objectives and dreams ultimately for their own financial lives. That's my goal, is to, if I meet somebody after I'm retired and they're living their life, they're living their dream, they're doing what they set out to do, and I had some part in helping them get there, how impactful is that? That's huge. And that's kind of how I'd like to be remembered, I think.
That's the best. So now I do, as you've heard me say over the years, I've always had my rants. So, my rant and my takeaway for our audience in this particular episode is, although the markets are volatile and they will be, down market, bear market, as I said, lots of stuff going on right now between inflation, between wars, between, even currency and valuations of companies. All of that you can set aside, because what we do in our business is create relationships. Is, as Dan said, and this is great advice, bring it back to the financial plan. People aren't worried about the markets. They're worried about themselves. They're worried about their impact of their retirement, their goals, their dreams, the things that they talk to you all the time. And if you have a solid relationship and are focused on helping people achieve those goals, the financial aspects of this really are secondary, if not way down the list. So if there's one takeaway that I'm going to take from Dan, it's focus on the relationship. Create value for your clients, and you will create value for yourself. That being said, any final words of wisdom, Dan?
Our clients are going to get through this because of our help. And just to keep in mind as advisors that we are really critical, and we need to be talking to our clients now. We need to be in front of them. We need to be making sure that if they have questions, that we're there for them, and we're being proactive and not reactive in this timeline. So
I love it. Well, thank you very much. We've had Dan Nolan on our episode. This is Turning the Page. I'm your host, Chris Reynolds. And if you like this episode, please make some comments, give us 5 stars, and refer us to your friends. With that, I can't wait to talk to everyone in the next episode. Thanks again, Dan, for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So if you've liked what you've heard today, do us a favor and hit subscribe. That way you'll find another episode and another actionable takeaway on how to keep building a better business.